Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's life? Not literally, but in the sense that your choices, your routine, even your thoughts seem rehearsed by someone you don't recognize in the mirror. There's a feeling that haunts modern man, being alive, but deeply disconnected, functional, but dead inside. Hermann Hesse in Steppenwolf described this state with surgical precision. He wasn't talking about failures. He was talking about you, about all of us who've built a respectable existence, but who, when closing the door at night, ask ourselves, is this it? Harry Haller is the mirror of civilized man, erudite, polished, impeccable. He possesses all the trophies that society worships: refined library, irreproachable musical taste, cultured conversation. But his interior is a morgue. His boredom isn't ordinary sadness. It's the exhaustion of someone who realized that respectable life is in fact a slow death. Haller doesn't fit in among the bourgeois on autopilot, but he also can't be the wild wolf howling inside him. He's divided, split, and this division is exactly what consumes us today, because we also live split between what we should be according to the world's expectations and what we really are when nobody's watching, between the social mask we wear perfectly every day and the internal voice we try to silence with noise, work, and distraction. These masks stick to the skin. And as long as we don't integrate these fragmented parts, as long as we keep pretending we're just one thing when in reality we're thousands, we'll continue feeling that something essential was stolen from us, that we're living a borrowed life, that we wake up every day to play a role we didn't choose. The first illusion we need to completely dismantle, without mercy, is the comfortable idea that intelligence guarantees meaning. Harry Haller is a brilliant intellectual by any metric you want to use. He can analyze society with cutting precision, criticize mass culture with solid arguments, understand the system's flaws with a clarity few people achieve. But all this impressive analytical capacity doesn't save him from emptiness. On the contrary, the more he thinks, the more he analyzes, the more he dissects the world around him, the further he moves from life itself. Haller's mind is a luxury labyrinth. He decorated the walls of his cell with brilliant quotes and theses, believing that the beauty of the frame would nullify the bars. He doesn't feel pain. He catalogues it. He doesn't suffer. He theorizes about suffering. And this is the final trap: intelligence used as anesthesia. Hesse shows us something brutal that nobody wants to admit. Knowing how to analyze life isn't the same as knowing how to live it. You can have all the right answers, master all the concepts, understand all the mechanisms, and still be completely lost when it comes to simply existing. Because intelligence, when disconnected from the soul, transforms the world into an arid desert where everything becomes concept and nothing becomes real experience. Everything can be explained, but nothing can be felt. And there you find yourself trapped in a perverse cycle where you perfectly understand others' suffering, can even write essays about it, but can't touch your own suffering in a genuine way. Because between you and your pain exists a thick layer of interpretations, analyses, theories. You don't feel, you think about feeling, and that's not the same thing. This deep disconnection between thinking and living has a root that goes beyond the individual. It's planted in the way we organize our collective existence. Modern man lives on autopilot in a way that would be comical if it weren't tragic. Hesse harshly criticizes the bourgeoisie of his time, that social class that transformed life into a predictable sequence of well-maintained appearances, rigorously kept schedules and duties executed without questioning. Wake up at the same time, work at the same tasks, eat the same things, sleep and start over. Repeat ad infinitum. Not because these actions make any deep sense, not because they're connected with something that really matters, but simply because that's what's expected. That's what everyone does. We become efficient employees of our own existence. We execute tasks with mechanical precision without questioning the purpose. We follow scripts we didn't write. We play roles we didn't choose. We live lives that seem to belong to someone else. And when someone asks us why we do what we do, the most honest answer, if we have the courage to admit it, would simply be, I don't know, but everyone does it, so it must be right. Halle feels deep disgust for this mechanical life happening around him. He sees it from outside, with the distance of a critical observer, and recognizes the trap. But even recognizing the prison with complete clarity, even seeing the bars with perfect sharpness, he can't escape completely. Because the trap isn't just outside, in the external world. It's inside, in the way he himself organizes his mind. We've internalized the machine. We carry the factory inside our heads, with its shifts, its goals, its obsessive productivity. And even when we try to stop, when we try to get off the tracks, we discover we no longer know how to live without them. We've lost the capacity to simply be without producing, without executing, without fulfilling. And here enters a dangerous psychological mechanism that Hesse exposes with disturbing mastery: overthinking as an elaborate form of escape. Harry Halle isolates himself from the world in his intellectual ivory tower. He spends endless hours reading dense texts, philosophizing about the human condition, criticizing everything and everyone with impressive precision. But all this intense mental activity is actually a sophisticated escape. Because while he's busy analyzing society out there, dissecting others' problems, building theories about what's wrong with the world, he doesn't have to deal with the chaos of his own feelings. He doesn't have to face his own contradictions, his own fears, his own repressed desires. Thought becomes a protective wall, not a bridge to understanding. We do exactly the same thing today, just with different tools. We consume content non-stop, compulsively. We watch videos one after another. We read endless articles. We debate ideas on social media. We accumulate information like trophies. We think we're seeking knowledge, that we're developing ourselves, that we're evolving. But in reality, we're just running from the encounter with ourselves. Because that encounter is scary in a way no book prepares you for. It means facing the parts we don't like and that we hide even from ourselves. The contradictions we prefer to ignore pretending they don't exist. The desires we learn to repress so well we don't even remember they're there anymore. It's much easier, much more comfortable to stay on the safe surface of intellect, where everything can be explained and categorized, than to dive into the messy and chaotic ocean of the soul, where nothing makes linear sense and everything contradicts itself. This escape from the encounter with oneself manifests especially clearly in the visceral fear of being in silence. Silence is a tribunal. When we turn off the world, the voices we ignored all day start to scream. In the book, when Halle comes home after another day fulfilling his social obligations and closes the door behind him, solitude crushes him like a physical weight. The wolf doesn't howl out there, on the distant step. He howls in the empty hallway of his house as soon as the Wi-Fi drops and the cell phone screen goes dark. We flee from silence not because it's empty, but because it's too populated with truths we don't want to confess. It's not a romantic solitude of those that poets celebrate, nor a contemplative solitude that leads to wisdom. It's a solitude that brutally reveals what he's been hiding from himself. This wild, instinctive, uncontrollable part he tries to suffocate daily with impeccable civility and impressive erudition. Silence is unbearable because when there's no external noise to distract us, we start to hear the internal noise, and that noise generally isn't pleasant. It's not made of elevated thoughts and profound insights. It's made of corrosive doubts, paralyzing fears, unexpressed angers that accumulate, unrealized desires that transform into resentment. So we do everything, literally everything, to avoid silence. We turn on the television even without wanting to watch anything specific. We grab our phones and start scrolling through infinite feeds of content that doesn't interest us. We put on headphones and fill our heads with music, podcasts, anything. Any noise is better than silence. Because deep down, even without consciously admitting it, we know that there, in that quiet and empty space, we're going to encounter the parts of ourselves that we've spent our whole lives trying not to recognize. We'll have to face who we really are when we take off all the masks, and that terrifies us. And the modern world, with all its technology and progress, enthusiastically helps us in this escape. Hesse criticized the mass culture of his time that beginning of radio and cinema that was already starting to standardize the human experience. But if he were alive today, if he could see what our relationship with stimuli has become, he'd be absolutely horrified. We live in a state of too many stimuli and too little soul. There's a constant and relentless bombardment of information, notifications, demands for attention. Our brain never truly rests. There's always something new to consume, something urgent to respond to, something important to check. We live in permanent alert mode, with adrenaline always slightly elevated, always ready to react to the next stimulus. And while the mind is busy in this frenetic rush, the soul withers in silence. Because the soul doesn't function like the mind. It needs empty space to breathe, silence to manifest itself, slow time to grow. It doesn't grow in noise and hurry. It grows in contemplative silence, in patient waiting, in delicate attention. But we systematically eliminate all these spaces from our lives. We fill every second with something, anything, as long as it's not empty. And then we ask ourselves, genuinely confused, why we feel so empty inside, despite being so full of things. The answer is simple, but painful. We're full of things that don't feed the soul, saturated with stimuli that don't nourish anything essential. And in the middle of all this saturation, the soul's voice becomes a whisper so low we can't hear it anymore, even when it's screaming. This deliberate drowning in constant noise has another devastating consequence we rarely recognize. We live entirely shaped by external expectations. Harry Haller desperately tries to fit into the educated society surrounding him. He goes to dinners where he doesn't want to be, maintains social forms even when they seem absurd, fulfills all the rituals expected of a man of his class and education. But each polite gesture is a small betrayal of his internal truth. Each social smile is a denial of what he really feels. His soul constantly screams for freedom, for authenticity, for undomesticated wildness. And he suffocates it meticulously with good manners, with appropriate behavior, with impeccable civility. We do exactly this every day, multiple times a day. We wear a social mask so well adjusted that sometimes we forget it's a mask. It hides who we really are, what we really think, what we really feel. We say what's expected instead of what's true. We act according to the social script instead of according to our genuine will. We perform the version of ourselves we believe is acceptable, approved, safe. And the emotional cost of this is absolutely brutal. Because constantly living, performing an edited and censored version of yourself is exhausting in a way no physical rest resolves. You never truly relax. You never allow yourself to simply be without filters. You're always in approval mode, always checking if you're being accepted, if you're behaving appropriately, if you're meeting expectations. And while obsessively seeking approval from outside, external validation, you completely lose connection with what's real inside. You lose contact with your own voice, with your own desires, with your own truth. And there comes a point where you don't even know anymore what the difference is between what you want and what others want from you. This permanent internal division between what we are and what we pretend to be is the beating heart of Hesse's work. The Steppenwolf isn't just a poetic and mysterious title. It's the anatomically exact description of modern man, permanently divided between the man and the wolf. The man is the civilized, cultured, rational, and controlled part. The one that knows how to behave in society, that respects rules without questioning, that functions perfectly within the system. The wolf is the wild, instinctive, chaotic, and free part. The one that wants to feel without thinking, that wants to live without moral breaks, that viscerally rejects the prison of social conventions. And Harry Haller, exactly like you at this moment, lives in constant and exhausting war between these two parts. In the morning, when you wake up and need to function in the world, you're the man, productive, responsible, adequate, controlled. At night, when obligations end and you're finally alone, the wolf appears, restless, unsatisfied, hungry for something you can't name or satisfy. And you think, because this is what culture teaches us, that you need to choose a side. Culture sells you the illusion of peace through amputation. They say that to be good, you must kill your wolf. But an amputated creature isn't holy. It's just incapable. Hesse's peace isn't the silence of death, but the harmony of chaos. The saint and the wolf must share the same table. If you kill the animal in you, your humanity will die along with it from lack of blood. But Hesse shows us, with a clarity that hurts, that this is the fatal trap. Because true peace doesn't come from the violent elimination of one side. It comes from the difficult and paradoxical integration of both. It comes from recognizing that you are, at the same time, civilized and wild, rational and instinctive, human and animal, and that you don't need to resolve this contradiction, you need to learn to inhabit it. And here we arrive at a crucial point that silently destroys millions of lives. Living right isn't the same thing as living with truth. Harry Haller follows all social rules without exception. He's polite with everyone, respectful in all situations, functional in all his obligations. He does absolutely everything society expects from a civilized and educated man. And even so, or perhaps exactly because of this, he reaches the literal brink of suicide. Because a life correct according to external norms isn't necessarily a true life according to the internal voice. You can follow all social norms perfectly, fulfill all duties without fail, be an impeccably acceptable person in everyone's eyes, and still be completely dead inside. Completely disconnected from yourself. Because what makes a life genuinely alive isn't conformity to rules, it's authenticity in expression. And authenticity, real authenticity, and not the Instagram version of it, often means breaking rules everyone follows, disappointing expectations everyone carries, choosing what's real instead of what's safe and approved. Haller discovers this too late, after decades living in a correct but dead way. But there's still time for you. You can still ask the honest question, am I living a correct life or a true life? And if the answer is the first, if you realize you're just fulfilling a script written by others, it's time to seriously consider that maybe correctness is just another prettier name for voluntary prison. But there's a fundamental turn in this story, an inflection point that completely changes the trajectory. And it begins when Harry Haller stops seeing his emptiness as a personal defect and starts recognizing it as an important sign. In the book, wandering the streets on another night of silent despair, he finds a mysterious and disturbing advertisement that leads him to the Magic Theatre, a place that, according to the advertisement, only opens for madmen. In other words, for those who question accepted reality, who don't swallow the world as it's presented, who keep alive the capacity to doubt. The devastating emptiness Haller felt wasn't a character flaw. It wasn't a sign of weakness or inadequacy. It was the necessary fuel for radical change. Because only those who are empty enough, only those who recognize something essential is missing, can be filled with something genuinely new. Only those who admit that what they have isn't enough have the true motivation to seek more. If you were satisfied with mechanical life, if you were content with social performance, you'd never question anything. You'd never seek something beyond. Emptiness is terribly uncomfortable, it's true. It hurts in a way few can bear, but it's also sacred. It's the door that opens when everything you carefully built stops making sense, and instead of desperately trying to patch it with distractions, shopping, relationships, obsessive work, maybe it's time to do the opposite. Cross through it, enter it, see what exists on the other side. But most people, when they finally recognize the emptiness, commit a fatal error that only deepens the problem. They seek outside what's missing inside. Harry Haller tried to solve his existential pain with more erudition, more intellectual isolation, more philosophical analysis. He read more books, he thought more deeply, he isolated himself more completely, and he failed miserably. Because the solution isn't in new external objects, new geographic places, new emotional relationships, new professional jobs. The solution is in a radical new way of seeing your own mind, of relating to your own experience. We do this all the time without even noticing. We think the problem is the current job, so we change jobs hoping the new company will resolve our dissatisfaction. We think it's the relationship, so we change partners hoping the new person will fill the void. We think it's the city, So we move hoping different geography will change who we are. And the emptiness not only continues, but often increases. Because it's not external. It's not caused by circumstances. It's internal. It's structural. It's about how you relate to yourself. And as long as you don't look inside with brutal honesty, you can change absolutely everything around you as many times as you want, and nothing will truly change in what matters. Halle's journey, the journey that saves his life, is a journey inward, and yours needs to be too if you want something beyond exchanging one prison for another. And this internal journey, this necessary descent, begins with something seemingly simple but profoundly difficult: learning to read the signs. The soul manifests itself in small signs that the rational mind dismisses. In the book, the magic theatre isn't a common physical place you can find on a map. It's an elaborate metaphor for the inner world that reveals itself when we finally stop being rigid and controlling. Halle can only enter this theatre when he abandons his intellectual certainties, when he allows himself to be vulnerable without protections, when he honestly accepts that he doesn't control everything and doesn't know everything. Life gives us signs constantly, every day, but we ignore them because they don't fit the plan we traced. Strange coincidences that seem too meaningful to be chance. Recurring dreams that disturb us and insist on returning night after night. Unexpected encounters that completely change our perspective. Old desires that persist despite all efforts to suffocate them. But we ignore all these signs because they ask us to leave the safe route, to abandon the careful plan, to risk ourselves in the unknown. The soul doesn't speak in logical and linear language. It speaks in symbols that need to be interpreted, intuitions that need to be followed, bodily sensations that need to be heard. And if you're trapped exclusively in the rational mind, if you only trust what can be proven and explained, you'll miss absolutely all these messages. You'll continue deaf to the only voice that really matters, your own internal voice, not contaminated by external expectations. To be able to hear this muffled voice, it's absolutely necessary to slow down. Harry Halle lived in constant and frenetic intellectual hurry, always analyzing the next concept, always thinking about the next problem, always moving quickly in mental territory. And to be able to enter the magic theatre, to have access to his inner world, he had to do something radically different. Stop. He had to learn to be present without agenda. He had to develop the capacity to simply be without producing anything. Because the soul demands contemplative time, slow and purposeless, that the modern world systematically tries to steal from us. We live at maximum speed all the time, always urgently running to the next thing, always in a hurry to get somewhere, always late for something. And in all this rush, in this constant speed, we completely lose the capacity to simply be, to look at the sky without thinking anything productive, to walk without a defined destination, just feeling the body move, to sit in deep silence without needing to fill the time with useful activity. Slowing down isn't laziness, as productivist culture makes us believe. It's active resistance. It's deliberately refusing the dictatorship of obsessive productivity that transforms us into efficient but empty machines. It's intentionally creating space so that the soul, which moves slowly like growing roots, can finally reach us and touch us. But consciously slowing down and seeking one's own soul has a real cost that needs to be recognized. And this inevitable cost is the social risk of choosing a simpler and less impressive life. In the book, Halle had to learn to dance and to laugh spontaneously. Things that for a serious intellectual like him seemed silly, superficial, unworthy of someone with his education and depth. But these were exactly the simple and apparently silly things he desperately needed. Because the soul isn't in great complex philosophical systems. It isn't in elaborate theories about the meaning of life. It's in the body that moves freely without thinking, in spontaneous laughter that arises without reason, in genuine and unplanned connection with another human being. Truly seeking the soul demands the enormous courage to seem ridiculous, silly, superficial to those who still live imprisoned in the rigidity of the intellectual ego. It means giving up the constant seriousness we use as armor. It means allowing yourself to be light without guilt, to be foolish without shame, to be simply human without needing to prove anything. And this is terrifying for those who built their entire identity and worth around being intelligent, serious, deep, different from others. But true depth, the depth that transforms, isn't in being grave and frowning all the time. It's in accepting and embracing the complete totality of human experience, including purposeless silliness, silly and childish joy, lightness that doesn't need to be justified or explained. And this radical and complete acceptance finally leads us to the lost essential. The essential for Hesse, and this is fundamental to understand, isn't to simplify life externally. It isn't to sell everything and live in a cabin. It isn't to abandon society and become a hermit. The essential is internal, accepting the infinite multiplicity of the soul. We aren't just one simple and defined thing. We're not just the competent and focused professional. We're not just the responsible and dedicated father or mother. We're not just the critical and analytical intellectual. We are literally 1,000 different things at the same time, many of them contradictory among themselves. We have 1,000 souls inhabiting the same body, and the fatal error, the error that splits us and makes us sick, is trying to choose only one of these souls and violently kill all the others. Trying to be only one coherent thing when we're multiple by nature. Returning to the true essential is accepting all these different souls without moral judgment. It's recognizing without guilt that you can be simultaneously serious and silly, rational and deeply emotional, disciplined and completely wild, spiritual and carnal. You don't need to resolve this apparent contradiction. You don't need to choose a side and eliminate the other. You need to learn to inhabit the paradox. Because human life isn't a mathematical equation that's solved with logic. It's a living paradox that's lived with acceptance. So what does it concretely mean to have a soul today in this modern world that tries to steal this from us? It means having a functioning inner magic theatre. A protected internal space where all your parts can exist freely without censorship. Having a soul is having developed the precious capacity to laugh at yourself, to not take yourself so mortally seriously all the time, to integrate your shadow, that dark part you carefully hide from others and even from yourself. It's the deep unity that paradoxically is born from the total acceptance of internal chaos. Many people mistakenly think that having a soul is being zen, balanced, resolved, in permanent peace. But Hesse shows exactly the opposite. Having a soul is being internally messy and being at peace with that mess. It's recognizing that you're multiple, contradictory, imperfect, incoherent, and that this isn't a problem that needs to be fixed. It's simply your complete humanity manifesting itself. The person without a soul is the one who rigidly forces themselves to be only one thing, who violently represses everything that doesn't fit the careful image they want to project, who lives edited, filtered, censored. The person with a soul is the one who allows themselves to be complete and total, even if complete means absolutely chaotic and contradictory. Now, how does all this translate into real practice? How to finally leave beautiful theory and enter concrete action? Hesse offers something surprisingly simple but transformative: the mirror exercise. Harry Haller spends a lot of time writing freely, looking without judgment at his internal contradictions, at his hidden fears, at his deep shames, not trying to solve them with practical solutions, not trying to fix them with willpower, just observing with attention, just recognizing they exist. And you can do exactly the same. Dedicate sacred time, even if it's just 15 minutes a day, to honestly look at your contradictions without trying to fix them immediately. Write about what truly bothers you, about what you hide from others, about what deeply shames you. Not to find quick solutions, not to turn the page and move on, but simply to recognize without condemnation that these things exist in you. Because the simple act of looking directly, without averting your eyes, without moral judgment, is already deeply transformative. Most of us live desperately fleeing from parts of ourselves. And this constant flight consumes a gigantic amount of vital energy. When you finally stop and look, when you recognize without condemning, something loosens inside. You no longer need to spend precious energy hiding. You no longer need to keep defenses always active. And this freed energy can finally be used to truly live, not just to survive maintaining appearances. And here we arrive at the final lesson that closes and integrates everything that's been said. At the end of Steppenwolf, there's a phrase that carries all the devastating and liberating weight of the work. Learn to laugh, for laughter is the only path to immortality. This isn't a superficial joke. It's not cheap motivational advice. It's the philosophical synthesis of everything. Because true laughter, the laughter born from total acceptance, is the complete acceptance of life exactly as it is. It's looking directly at the fundamental absurdity of existence, at your own irremediable failures, at the tragedy and comedy that constantly mix, and not despairing. It's finding genuine lightness where before there was only crushing weight. Harry Haller spends the entire book taking himself too seriously, trying to solve everything intellectually, trying to be coherent and consistent, and this almost literally kills him. His salvation comes at the precise moment when he finally learns to laugh at himself, when he stops desperately fighting against what he is and simply accepts. The soul isn't a trophy to be conquered at the end of an epic journey. It's a presence you freed when you stopped guarding your own cell. The magic theatre is open, but the ticket costs your willingness to seem normal. Laugh at the abyss. Integrate your shadows. The wolf doesn't want to devour you. He just wants you to stop pretending he doesn't exist.